Hey, welcome back to Atypical Talk. This is a podcast where we have conversations that illuminate the intersection of faith, culture, and the common spaces of our humanity. I'm Abby.
I'm Allison.
And I'm Joel.
And our first question today is, if you could have the ability to talk to your pets, would you want that? Why or why not?
Yes, 10 out of 10. Every single time. I talk to my dog anyways.
Yeah, we all do that, right?
And she
Yeah.
can't talk back. So it would be so amazing if I actually got some sort of response back from my dog. So hands down, yes.
Okay.
Is this more of the question of like if we could talk to them or if they could communicate back to us?
Like you could understand what they were saying.
See, that's
Yeah,
both
yeah.
for sure. Because I already talked to my dogs.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I will say there is a little part of me that's a little insecure of my dog Blaney to talk back to me to be like, dude, what are you still scrolling on your phone? Like, get a life. You need to get up and do that laundry that's sitting there. I feel like she would say those things to me because sometimes I feel like she'll just give me that look.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
Yes.
And I'm like, okay, stop judging me.
Yeah. Or if I told my dog, like, your breath really stinks, she'd be like, your breath ain't not
That's not anything
any
that-
better.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I could see also my dog being a little
I
sassy.
would enjoy that because they're just faithful friends. What about you, Abby?
I am actually the other way. Like, I feel like
You don't want to know?
we have the perfect amount of communication right now, and I could easily see my dogs just talking to me all day long. I need some
Too
quiet
much.
time. I need some quiet time, and those two, they're already vocal as is.
Yeah.
They're just going to keep talking and talking. It'll be like having a couple of little kids in your house.
No quiet time.
Asking questions.
That is a good
Yep.
point.
You know, another added bonus, though, of being able to communicate with your dogs is like if you've ever had a dog that's been sick and you know something's off, but you're like,
yeah.
what?
What's
You don't know
wrong?
what's wrong.
Yeah.
You can't really know. It's almost like having a little kid again to where like they're sick and they don't know how to communicate and it's terrible. It's so bad.
Yeah.
Yes. But I would still do it.
Yeah. So on the topic of that, our first topic is a Washington Post article by Marlene Simmons titled, "Can Dogs Talk by Pressing Buttons?
Hard-hitting stuff from the Washington Post,
Yes.
by the
Oh,
way.
yeah,
I love
absolutely.
this. Here we go.
What science says about this debate." Button dogs who use buttons to communicate with their pet parents are growing in popularity. Pet parents record nouns, verbs, and emotions on buttons and believe their dogs can ask questions, express feelings, and indicate something they want. However, animal behavior experts question what the dogs are really saying and whether the words mean the same thing to dogs as they do to humans. A study at the University of California at San Diego is researching whether the buttons can enable dogs to communicate meaningfully. While some experts believe that dogs can use the buttons, others argue that dogs already have ways to communicate and that humans should learn to read dog body language. Regardless, engaging with the buttons can enrich the bond between pets and their owners. So before reading this article, what did you think? I know, Allison, you've seen the videos of
Yes.
dogs using buttons. Did you think that they were actually communicating?
I don't know. It's so hard because, like, I think, you know, like we just mentioned, too, sometimes we know what our dogs are saying, you know, right? Like, our dog, when she needs to go outside, she will literally go sit in front of you and just stare. And she will not move, like, until you get up and let her outside. So I think they communicate already in a lot of ways. But I don't know. It would take so much practice, I think, and training, like, to get your dog to know what that button means.
Yeah.
So I don't know. The ones I've seen on TikTok, it always seems like, oh, their dog's a genius, you know? Like, is my dog just dumb, you know? But at the same time, like, that's probably fake news.
Yeah.
But I would love for it to be real. I would love that.
Yeah, because I feel like you can train them somewhat to use the buttons if they have a button that says, I need to go to the bathroom,
Yeah.
or a button
Food.
that says,
Yeah.
I want a treat, you know?
Yeah.
And train them that way. But I don't think you can have buttons that say, I don't know.
My
I
stomach
love
hurts.
you.
Yeah.
I love you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love you
Yeah.
button. You know.
Yeah.
Well, because you could, but what they are, you know, potentially saying is, oh, every time I hit this button, they give me pets, you know? So,
Yeah.
like, they may not be saying, I love you. They may be actually saying, like, give me the pets, you know?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
So, yeah, it's very hard to know, like, are they actually saying what this button says?
Yeah. Joel, did you see these videos? I know it was really popular on
Because
TikTok.
you don't have the tickety talk.
I am not on the talk, so I've not seen these videos at all. hanging out here on my high horse. But no, I would say that, like, yeah, you could probably like be very militant. And I mean, I've seen people in dog training train dogs to do some pretty amazing things. So if you want to put in like that much time and effort and be like militant, military kind of training with your dog, I mean, I could see that. But also, they're speaking a different kind of language. They have different like hierarchy of needs and understandings and different kind of intellect than we have, and that's okay. I mean, we can still communicate with them, but not carry on the same kind of conversation. You know, we can go back to like, what was it, the 50s and 60s with Lassie. Like, what Lassie? What girl?
Timmy fell down the well.
He's in the well? Oh, you know, like, I don't know if that's really how it goes. But, you know, it's kind of amazing that our animals, our pets, like, they do read us and our emotions, and we're sad and we're stressed, or, you know, like, it's a kind of amazing thing that God gives us even inside of just the way that things are without the buttons as well. It's a gift,
And I remember seeing one where this dog, Bunny, which I think made it popular, was this one specific dog. She pressed the buttons like, why dog, or something like that. And so people were like, oh my gosh, this dog's having an existential crisis. I'm like, no, it just pressed 2 random buttons. It's not asking why it's a dog.
Why am I a dog? And what is my purpose? Oh my
Or the
goodness.
one where an ambulance went by and it hit like squeaker car or something like that. I'm like, okay, that's a coincidence. Come on now.
Or the pet parent is getting them, you know, press this button, I'll give you a treat.
Yeah, putting them right next to each other.
I mean, I love dogs, but they're not dolphins.
No.
We're not talking about that kind of intelligence, and that's okay.
No, dogs are great for what they are. They don't need
it.
to have full-on conversations with me. And,
Most of the time, my oldest daughter thinks our newest dog has no thoughts going on in her brain, so there's no way she would be able to train to push any buttons anyway. So she's cute.
Our next article today is a KFF Health News article by Catherine Sweeney titled, Science Says Teens Need More Sleep. So why is it so hard to start school later? Nashville's mayor, Freddie O'Connell, is pushing to have school start times pushed back due to the scientifically proven fact that teenagers' biological clocks shift, causing them not to feel sleepy until around 10:45 or 11 at night. Lack of sleep for teenagers is linked to mental health struggles, worse grades, traffic accidents, and more. Despite the science, resistance to later starts is less about the science than logistical and financial difficulties, especially with busing. The National Sleep Foundation conducted a 2022 survey of parents, teachers, and other adults that found only about 1/3 of parents wanted later starts. However, sleep is essential to brain development and academic performance, and it helps teenagers improve their mental health. So do you guys think that there could be any issues with schools having later start times?
All I have to say is I've been saying this since I was in 8th grade. I fought for this.
When you wanted a later start time.
I showed the documents, the scientific journals to my teachers and principals. They weren't buying it. And now I'm like, kids need to suffer through what I went through. That's what I'm feeling. Deal with it.
Now because you're old.
Oh, that's funny.
I can see both sides, obviously. Like, you know, if you read the article, it talks about how, you know, some of their concerns are high school students, you know, if they start later, they get home later. You know what I mean? So if they get home later, then maybe those younger siblings that they have that get off the bus, there's nobody going to be there for them because normally the high school student is also home, you know, just so then that leads to childcare issues and people paying for, you know, so I can see, you know, where this could be an issue.
It would have to be a systemic shift on all these things, from like after school care to like parents and their work schedules being tied with it, to think about like after school programming and practices and things like that.
It's just not as easy as changing the start time. Like everything has to change.
But
There's
I think,
a snowball.
but it is interesting. Like we are just staring at like this is better for kids,
but we're not going to do it.
And we're not going to do it because of all those things. And it is a laundry list of things. I mean, to consider all these different realities with busing and sports and parents' schedules and elementary, the split between elementary and high school schedules and stuff. There's a ton of things to move around, but it's discouraging to me that like we literally are just looking at the science. We're like, this is healthier for kids who that's who we're doing school for,
Right.
are the kids and students,
Yeah.
so they can get a great quality education, so they can be contributing members of society, so we in our country can be competitive with other countries, like all these good things. We have the facts, but we're like, it's hard,
It
though.
seems hard.
And
Yeah,
it's discouraging to me because it feels like, we're America. Can't we figure this stuff out, right? Because there are all these things, and I think we could if we had the will to do it, but it's fascinating to me, and you know, good on Nashville's mayor to like actually bring this up, being like, guys, we have the science here. Like, these are studies that say that this is just the way this should be for this, you know, segment of our society, so they can get the best education possible. And it's frustrating to me because it's like, dang it, we used to like do things and like fix problems.
Yes, and it, you know, again, you know, you're looking at it like, okay, this is a school problem, you know, but it's not, because it would require like my employer and your employer to be okay with you either, you know, coming in a little later potentially, or you know,
the whole
however
workday would shift,
you'd have to
right?
change your work day, and so getting everybody on board, that's where I feel like it seems like an overwhelming, you know what I mean, issue to change. Because if it was just a school problem and the school said we're going to do this, fine, but then you have these parents you know, that are going to be in an uproar because it changes their whole
changes
everything. Yes.
And we're seeing these kind of, it's interesting, I was thinking about this as you were speaking about how we've seen systemic changes happen in public schooling, but the way they've done it has been very gradual over time. Like where we live in Indiana, summers have been gradually getting smaller for years. And you know, when I was in school, I remember it was like 10 to 11 weeks now, and it's down to like 7.5, 8, you know what I mean? When you don't have a ton of snow. And that's a huge shift. I mean, that's a huge percentage of the summer break. So schools are gradually moving towards a balanced calendar, more breaks throughout the year, summer being smaller. They didn't just say, here's this piece of legislation, we need to do it. We need to like, I mean, how do you eat an elephant? You take it one bite at a time. So it'd be interesting over the next 10 years, moving things 15 minutes, you know what I mean? And sort of moving it in that direction, because that gives organizations and all these different, you know, structures around it that you're talking about, gives them time to adjust, not just like, it's over with, right? But that's the way that they've done the school scheduling thing. And parents and everybody has complained about it, but they're doing it. And because they're doing it in a gradual system, it's made it more tolerable. I remember hearing in church years ago, this is not about the culture that I think that we have at our church right now, at least, but about a pastor coming in and wanting to move the organ to the other side of the sanctuary. For shame. Yeah. So like, and people are like, you know, you can't move it. And he goes, well, you know how I moved it? I moved it 1 inch every month for 10 years. You know what I mean? And so I just started slowly moving. And there's something about the psychology of change inside of that you know, helps people process it as it's slower. So maybe that's a way to do it. Maybe ripping the Band-Aid off and having these people figure it out because your kids have got to go to school. Maybe that's the way to do it. I don't know.
Well, and you know, like you mentioned, if you know, there was a possibility of like before or after school care, like if that was another thing, then you know what I mean? So I feel like there are ways to remedy the issue, but
it's funny. I started thinking about sports though, and I remember, you know, growing up and having practices from, you know, 3 to 5 or 5 to 7. I'm like, but if you move the whole school day back, it's so late that I'm like, well, then they would have to do morning practices.
They could do early practice.
But I'm like, but that defeats the purpose of them getting more sleep because they're doing morning practice. I'm like, oh, we're right back to where we started.
That's very true. Yeah. But again, sports are a choice that you make. You don't have to do it. You could sleep, you know, but
yeah.
But anyway, I just feel like the National Sleep Foundation needs to conduct a study about parents with toddlers and help them figure out how we can get rid of daylight savings time and all those things.
I thought we were on the move to that too, by the way.
It's moving and then it's stuck and then they didn't vote on it. Yeah, so it's so I think we're still on the crazy train here with DST.
Yeah. I mean, I understand all the additional problems with moving the start time, but I mean, one of the things that it mentioned it affects is like mental health for these teenagers. And you talked on Sunday, Joel, about you know how bad you know high schoolers and even younger kids, how their mental health is like really declined in recent years. And I feel like you know this is something that we need to take seriously and start looking at if, you know, changing the start time can help them get sleep and help their mental health. You know, it's one small thing.
It's one small thing. Yeah. And you know what? If we would just make sure they got more sleep and took away TikTok from them, it would solve everything.
It's not always TikTok. You're fired.
Well, on the subject of TikTok, our last article is titled Dear TikTok, Social Media Under Fire as Israel-Hamas War Inflames Anti-Jewish Hate. This is a USA Today article. Jewish social media influencers are calling on TikTok to combat an alarming surge in anti-Semitism that they say is making the popular short-form video platform unsafe for the Jewish community. The daily barrage of hate and harassment that regularly targets Jewish content creators on TikTok has been compounded to unimaginable degrees since the October 7th Hamas attacks. The letter posted online on Wednesday urges TikTok to beef up safety tools and content moderation systems to protect Jewish users, as well as crack down on misinformation related to the Hamas attacks and the Israeli military assault on Gaza. TikTok says it prohibits hate speech and harassment and removes hateful content and accounts and redirects hashtags and searches associated with hateful behavior. It also takes down content that contains anti-Semitism, Holocaust denial, misinformation, and harmful stereotypes about Jewish communities, the company said. Since October 7th, the company says it has removed over 775,000 videos and closed over 14,000 live streams promoting violence, terrorism, hate speech, misinformation, and other violations of its rules.
That's insane, first of all.
Right.
That's so many.
Almost 1 million, yeah.
I know. It's crazy to think that there can be that much out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
14,000 live streams that were promoting violence or terrorism or hate speech. Like, that's so sad.
Yeah. So do you think social media has been a big factor in this? Do you think social media has made people more hateful and cruel? Because, I mean, this article only talks about TikTok, but I'm sure that there's, hate outside of social media as well.
It's kind of for me, it's like a chicken or the egg conversation. Part of me believes that like social media provides us with a little bit of an apocalypse. And what I mean by that is like an unveiling of what's really going on. So maybe these thoughts are harbored in people and then they feel like they have an anonymous way to share them. And they spew them out. And then if they see people like it, you get that endorphin kind of thing to continue and to keep spreading.
Say more, yeah.
Say more. And so there's a part of me, and it's sad for me to even consider, but like maybe there is this kind of hatred and xenophobia and anti-Semitism specifically that is in our culture at large. But at the same time, I could also argue with myself, and I think this could just be one of the harmful effects of so much of our life digital and being through screens instead of seeing the whites in people's eyes. And I mean, do you remember like growing up and you would say something or somebody said something to you that hurt your feelings and they were being mean and you could like see them like respond and like wince and you saw like almost the way that it made them feel. And then you would feel bad, or vice versa, to where it was the other way around, and then like they would feel bad, and then you would be like, "Oh, I shouldn't have said that." Like you see them sort of recoil and respond. With social media, like because we're just firing off words, we don't see the way that affects another human being in the same way that picking on kids or getting picked on. We could experience, we could see and feel, and so much of relationships being through a screen and through text. We don't have to like have that check in ourselves, right? We can just say something ridiculous and it be hurtful and hateful, and then we just turn our phone off or close our phone or shut our laptop or turn our tablet off and move on with our day. To where I do think there's an element that we are to social media that we're losing empathy and we're losing that human. Oh, I shouldn't have said that because look how that made that person feel. I can see them. Tears well up in their eyes, or I can see them kind of shrink back. We miss that. And I think that's actually probably a really helpful part of socialization and just all relationships is like, that's why when you can sit across the table from somebody, whether it be a first date or any kind of group meeting, you can read their body language and you can see like, oh, that did not play well. Or I shouldn't have talked about that political candidate that way because that's not how they're seeing things. And you can read those things. And I think social media can contribute, or us overindulging in social media and having too much of our relational world on it can contribute to us not picking up on those social cues or caring and having empathy for what that other person might actually think and what their experiences could be as well. So I think I can see it both ways, and it's tragic, but I don't want to lose that real paramount part of our humanity of seeing people and seeing how we respond and feeling when we say things that hurt people.
Yeah, because it's hard too. Like if you're the person that's seeing that on social media, you know, the cringy post that you're like, oh, why did they post that? Or they shouldn't have said that. You know, so unless somebody goes to them and says, hey, bro, like, that's not cool. Like, why did you post that? You know, kind of a thing. Yeah, people aren't going to know. They're just going to think, oh, that was fine. Like, nobody said anything. People liked it. You know, so it's just...
And it's a lot easier to move
no
on.
Accountability.
And it's a lot easier, like, if somebody said something that offended me, it's a lot easier for me to be like, turn my phone off, or go to somebody else that I know agrees with me and talk about that person who said the bad thing. That's a lot easier for me to do than to actually like have a DM and be like, bro, that's not cool. You can't say that because that is hurting these people.
Super offensive.
And so I think like, you know, I can be wrong on that too, because it's a lot easier for me to just complain about the person to somebody else that always agrees with me, instead of going to that person and being like, bro, come on. You can't say that.
So that's where it's hard too, because I feel like, you know, sometimes we have accountability in that, like, but at the same time, I also feel like you're responsible for the things you say on the internet, you know? So I don't know. It is very hard. But I do feel like people definitely feel a lot more freedom to say things that they probably would have, maybe they've been thinking them, or maybe that's how they feel deep down, but they probably would have never said it out in the world. Except now, you don't have to see anybody.
On that note, I was watching some talk show this last week, and Fareed Zakaria, I think he's on CNN, he was talking about in the height of his reporting during the 2020 elections, he said that he got hundreds of thousands of tweets and messages just saying terrible racist things about him and terrible things about who he was as a person or a journalist. And he goes, and through that entire time, I had 2 human beings come up to me and say something terrible to
my
me.
Face. Yeah.
He goes, like 2 people said something terrible and harmful in public, compared to hundreds of thousands of these things that were online. He's like, this is messing with us. You know, like this, you know, it's either creating a monster or revealing a monster, one way or the other, and probably a mixture of both. So to speak specifically about the conflict between Israel and the terrorist organization Hamas, and I think it's, again, we talked about this on our last episode, we need to be able to hold 2 different things in our head at the same time. To be that, you know, Hamas has performed some terrible, egregious, violent, heinous acts against innocent people in Israel, and the state of Israel, the government of Israel, can be overreacting and having a ton of violence in the way of innocent people that are in Gaza, maybe not part of Hamas, but in Gaza as well. And we need to be able to hold both groups accountable and move towards justice for both. But it is unbelievable to me, like how quickly we can throw words and put downs and put an entire group of people into a swear word or some kind of slur that we would use towards them, whether it be Palestinians or whether it be Jewish people. It's tragic to me how these kind of things can unearth that quick racism in that subtle way that people talk about things. And to see 775,000 videos and 14,000 live streams promoting violence and more hatred, it blows my mind. And so it's something that I'm just watching out for more, because I just, in my everyday life, I just don't feel like I encounter it. And then I ask myself, do I encounter it in subtle ways that I'm not even thinking about it? Or is this just people online? I don't know. It's so bizarre. But, you know, again, wanting there to be peace, wanting there to be justice, wanting to like move beyond just revenge in this cycle that's been going on since the 1940s and even probably earlier than that between these people groups. We are called to love and stand for people, not just Americans, and not just people from Israel, not just people from Palestine, but people. That's who matters to God, and that's who Jesus died for, was people, all people. And any time that we are dehumanizing a person with our language, with our actions online, where we find ourselves on the other side, the wrong side of Jesus. And that's a challenge for us to think about as we think about this ongoing conflict that has so much tension and fervor attached to it. even in America.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me so much of what I've heard from people who are Muslim, what happened to them after 9/11.
Yeah.
It feels like as a country we haven't grown. It's still been because you share a faith with someone who did something like this, I'm going to just lump you in with them and be hateful towards you.
Yeah, which is like how do Christians like that when people think Westboro Baptist is
Everybody.
Christian and everybody who
Yeah.
like is a follower of Jesus. So you hate gays and you only want this and that and you only vote this way. And I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
And so again, that thinking is there and nobody likes it.
Yeah.
You know, when
Well,
you
it's hard.
oversimplify
Yeah,
those things.
like on, TikTok, for example, this, article that you shared, like a lot of people followed or liked a lot of these, Jewish creators or whatever because they shared foods and different things from the culture. And then just all of a sudden to like flip on a dime because, this conflict is happening. And I'm like, how can that be? Like you liked this person yesterday.
Yeah.
And today you don't. Like I don't. So for me, that's where it's so hard because I'm like, why are we not looking at people like people?
Yeah.
Like you liked them and the stuff they created and the way they made you feel and all of that yesterday and today because they happen to be Jewish. Now it is uncomfortable for you and you have things you want to say. Like I don't know. It's that's where I don't get it. I'm like, I don't understand how people flip that switch so quick.
Yeah, people fear what they don't understand, and the movement from fear to striking out and punching forward is really subtle. And I think that's what you see a lot of people being fearful of the other, whatever the other is, and it's just not them.
Yeah.
And I think we have not, as this culture, grown that way. And as followers of Jesus, I mean, man, this is like one of the clarion calls of Jesus is to love the other. And this is what he got in so much trouble for. And this is what drew this wide, diverse group of people to him and his message of the kingdom of God. And I just want to be a part of a counter story. So I think the challenge for us is to understand that our digital life is our life, and how we talk online is actually who we are. And there shouldn't be this is who I am on Facebook and this is who I am at the office or church. And in that, our words have power to hurt people, to tear something down, or to build people up and to support people and tell them that we see them. So how are we using our words online? And how are we using our voices for people that are on the boot of society, on the undercurrent, the people that are on the outside, the ones that are hurt, the ones that feel like they don't belong, the ones that are in oppression that we're experiencing right now, seeing in the Middle East. We need to use our voices for them instead of against them.
Yeah. Well, that's it for this episode of Atypical Talk. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to talk about, you can email those to atypicaltalkpod@gmail.com. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube at Atypical Talk Pod. Make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to get updates when new episodes go live. We hope that these conversations today have helped you think wider, love deeper, and partner with God to bring the up there, down here in your everyday life.
Wait, we're on TikTok? No!
Okay, Grandpa.